Hey, this is Gene. Today is the first day of the premiership, but I'm going to talk about something a little bit more difficult today. I might have a video later in the day that talks about the premiership, and I'll tell you what I think who's going to win there. But this is going to be a little bit more what I used to talk about more on this channel. It was really, really nice to see a former, I think she's still a fitness influencer. I mean, they get anybody on these shows to talk about stuff, and she has got her own podcast, and she's been more relevant. She's a lesbian, not that that matters. I have people in my family that are that way, or whatever they are today. I don't know. I don't care. I'm not talking about that. But she was on CNN last night, and there was this whole thing. I guess it was a Smithsonian that Trump wanted to change some of what they're doing because it is so anti-white. And yes, we're going to talk about that on this channel. And she was just bringing up the fact that less than 2% of Americans or white Americans had slavery. She tried to talk about the fact that slavery was around before we ever became a country. We only had the practice of having slaves for 90 years as a country. And the people around the table there, most of them were happened to be black. There was another woman there talking about certain things, and they were just astonished that she even brought it up. And she's like, "No, we just got to talk about American history." And it says, and she's tried to respond to them, and she said, "You do realize we're the first race to stop it," and they didn't want to hear it. And then she almost got it out. I think I heard her say, and I'll try to link it to you. Matt Walsh was talking about it this morning, and I'm so happy that it's finally coming out on mainstream stuff. People like Vincent James, Nick Fuentes, myself for over 10 years have been talking about this phenomenon of white guilt and what has caused it. And there are other areas of that we'll discuss in this video. But she almost got it out. She said, "And you know who was in charge of the slave trade?" And I think she was going to say it. I thought she was going to say that word. And I don't even know. She might be one. She might be a Jew. I don't know. And I'm not talking about all Jews. And when people respond to any type of video like this, I think you're anti-Semitic. And all I'm doing is not all Jews have money that can do this stuff, but they clearly ran and was in charge of the transatlantic slave trade. They were there, and probably without them, they probably never would have got to the United States. Even before the United States, that wouldn't happen. But let's just go back with this, and you just saw that the shocking. It's almost the denial of what she said, which was factually true on everything. Less than 2% of white Americans ever had slaves. There were a lot of black men that owned slaves in this country. That there are still slaves now, and there have been cultures that have had slaves for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And if they're going to say now that when the black person in Africa had slaves, that was a long time ago and we shouldn't talk about it, but now it's been 160 years since we've eradicated the idea of having slaves. I'm not saying our country is perfect. It's not. And I will continually say it is one of the original sins of this country that we had slaves at all. But it was not natural, but it was clearly everybody did it. We cannot continually just look at people and say, because you're white, that you have to atone for all slaves in the entire world because of the paleness of your skin. It's just not, it's not factually right. It's not morally right to blame people here that are alive now and continually have federal buildings or museums just sit there and just push this narrative. Oh, it's only people that look like you that would ever have slaves. And these people on the table, the round table, was like, well, we're just talking about American history, but that's not how it's formed. And it's in all our schools. And I noticed this probably in my last part of when I was in school years ago. It was almost like, how we destroyed the Indians, and that black people this and all this stuff. And it's just at some point, I kept thinking to myself as I go into my 40s, 50s, and 60s, at some point, people are going to actually stand up or wake up and realize that this is just all about bullshit. It was a normal practice for hundreds, thousands of years that one group of people would enslave another group of people just because they needed the resources of those slaves. And as bad as people don't want to hear it, that in our country, especially, slaves were. Now, I'm not saying that some slaves were not killed by their masters and stuff. It happened, but these were commodities. They cost them money. They wanted to make sure they do the right job. They didn't want them not to do the right job. They were they were doing stuff in the field and doing stuff like that. They didn't want people to die because they weren't doing the stuff. I'm not saying we should have slaves, but it wasn't as what we always see on all these shows. And it was wrong, okay? It's just it's the denial of factual evidence when somebody talks around you and says this and says this has to fucking stop. You're not guilty because your ancestors, mine didn't have any, but people that look like me had slaves. That everybody is guilty. But we know what's happened in the last whatever 50, 60, 80 years in this country. The epidemic of pushing the white man down and saying everything is your fault. So you had that side, the whole Native American thing, and being colonizers, and the black thing, the slavery thing. Then come along the Holocaust, and there's another group of white people in Europe that has been paying for the sins of a historical event that has been shaped for one entity at all. Meanwhile, during all this time and before that, there were genocides going everywhere else. That more people died well out of the camps from other areas of the world, so much more than were really happened in the camps. That people died just as bad as the people in the camps. And I'm not going to legislate my belief system about the camps. I'm not going to do it. I just think there are questions that needs to be asked. And I'm so proud that the younger generation, Generation Z, the men have becoming almost radicalized. I won't call them conservative, but they're getting to the point now that they're tired of it. They're tired of being blamed for everything. And when they go down that rabbit hole and they realize, holy shit, there's a lot of stuff here. This doesn't make any sense. How is it possible that this group of people was around 13 or 14 million people and they somehow increased their population during the war, where what, 20, 30, 40% of the white population in Europe were killed? Most of them men. But somehow their group actually increased. Again, I'm not saying that people were not interned. They were. We interned the Japanese. That could be a sin as well. And we've already apologized to the Japanese, and we've apologized to Black America. But the people that live right now never experienced that. We should always remember this is how you can be bad being a human being. But again, it's not always a white person that's doing it. And at some point, we're starting to see a little bit of the younger people actually recognizing their identity. I'm not going to call them identitarians. I'm not going to call them what Nick Fuentes is. Some of them have gone to there. Some of them are their gropers and all that stuff. But every other race in the world is allowed to be proud, to support it, their own. We are frowned to do it. So when a white woman, and I'm assuming she is, I don't know, her background could be something else. If she stands up and says, this just isn't right, You just can't go into our national museums and say everything in here that's bad is because of white man, and you use it generally. You talk about slavery, and you just say it's the white man, and but yet we all know that that name comes from the words from Slavic white people that were slaves by darker people. And it's been going on for, like I said, thousands of years. It's in the Bible. It's not a good thing to do. It's something that's just part of the way that we are, and having dominance over another group. So people are actually waking up, and I was just sitting there for years and years and said, I don't. People are never going to wake up. I kept saying to myself, when is there going to be a moment that people actually wake up? I thought that after Black Lives Matter happened, I thought maybe people waking up. Maybe there is some residual from that. But people on the mainstream are talking about this now. They would never have said this 5 years ago, 2 years ago. If Matt Walsh got on there and started talking about stuff and actually used the term anti-white, like Mark Dice does, he would have been canceled. And there has to be a time that we actually should at least support each other. And and then you continually hear this, there is no white culture. And we just when you hear stuff like that, you're just like, we created the West, the laws, the aqueduct, electricity. I mean, oh, but there's no, you can't. No, you're not. That white person in Italy is not the white person in France, let's say, from 100 or 500 years ago. Well, most of them are. There are dramatic things, but you won't say the same thing. I don't know. I mean, maybe have a conversation with an African, and I got one from Kenya and one from the Sudan. I mean, obviously, they probably would say that they're different. They probably would. But clearly, here in the United States, when we talk to any black people, they all unify with themselves, and they use themselves as a monolith that it has to be for everybody. They don't look at the different differences between their backgrounds and actually were from their ethnic backgrounds. They may have somebody that's more West Indian or Caribbean. A lot of them people don't really want to deal with the black people in this country. They just don't, because they come from a different type of, I would say, a different type of stock, that they're very hardworking and all that type of thing. And then we have people here in the United States that have been growing up under the welfare system, and they're very entitled. And if they don't get what they want, they try to go get it, and they break laws. And I'm just sorry. You look at the school statistics on young African Americans, and it's not good. But there was a time in this country that it was fine, or at least somewhat similar to the majority in the country, which was white. But it's changed, and that's another video about there's no fathers in the homes, and this is all part of that as well. And then they start having sex over and over and over again, and sometimes they'll kill their kids through abortion, or they'll have 105 kids, and they don't feed them well, and their IQ is still stilted, and they make more crime, and it continues over and over again. And you can make the claim that maybe somehow that somebody tried to do that, to do something to the black community. I don't know. That has more of a claim than slavery at this point. If you're going to say there's some sort of conspiracy that the federal government was trying to kill off the black people by giving drugs in their communities, well, it's happening in the white communities as well. So maybe is that all part of it? I mean, we can go down that rabbit hole if you want. But the biggest thing I wanted to get across here is that I'm very happy that people are actually talking about this on the mainstream. That this young woman, she's 50, saying things that people like myself, Vincent James, Nick Fuentes, Lily, all these young people, James a little bit older, but and finally people are waking up because it was always the truth, and people didn't want to talk about it because they didn't want to get canceled and lose their either their influence or money. But now it's out there, and they'll still push away guys like Lily and Nick and Vincent, but it's coming. The wave, it's like the tsunami thing is going out, right? And everybody on the store knows that that wave is coming back. You they've It's not even being red pilled. I don't even know what you would call it anymore. Nick says he was red pilled by something, and I'm like, when you talk about the difference between what red pilling it is and what actually Nick talks about and Vince talks about and Lily talks about, they have to come with a different type of term for it, because it's coming. And he's already galvanized millions of young people, and Lily will do it as well. Uh, People have the ability to understand, and it's not comical because I don't know if it's a good thing or not. But when I hear all these young people listening to a certain dictator from Germany with the English hearing the audio and understanding what that man was talking about and why he was revered by his own countrymen till the end. Uh, it doesn't necessarily mean that they were wrong uh, on most of the things that they did. Um, the other part, the Holocaust, all that, different video. I may never put it on here, but people are waking up. Doesn't make me a Nazi to say that what some of the thing he said back then makes me a Nazi. It doesn't really follow my ideology that I believe. Um, However, at that time, when you realize there were other people in Europe that had a lot of power, he was trying to stop something he felt was coming. And now it was basically somewhat stilted for a little bit, but it's now reared here in the West and in the United States. And I just hope that this awakening continues and continues and continues, and then eventually we do something about it politically. Because it's going to get, and I mean, for years and years and years, I said it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And I may not be around to see it, but I don't want my kids to deal with it. I don't want, if they ever have kids, to have to deal with it. I don't think young people should have to deal with it. We should be able to deal with this politically at the ballot box and get out certain people that are not really here to be America first. We have to get rid of those who have dual loyalties. I know, just saying that is considered anti Semitic if you just say that. Because if you say that person has dual loyalties, people are going to say you must be talking about a dude that's actually Jewish. Well, why could you not have dual loyalties if you came here from Somalia and now you're a senator or a congressman and you're saying that your motherland is Somalia and you're going to do everything you can do for Somalia? That's not good for the United States. You come to the United States, you need to assimilate under the ideas of the values of being American. And it's a very easy way to do it. Just look at our founding documents and look at our Constitution. If you can do that, and you think that, yeah, I want to do that, then we would love for you to stay. But if you're going to come here and advocate for other foreign interests, we're going to have to tell you to leave. So, just by that, I'm almost talking for 20 minutes now. Again, thank you for her to do that. Love to see it. I should have watched the rest of it. I'm sure that she can continue to be shouted down, but everything that she said was true, regardless of their whimpering while she brought it up. And thanks to Matt Walsh to defend her. And I'm sure other conservative people are doing it today as well. They're late to the game, but at least they're now in the game. We'll talk to you guys later, and I'll do my video now about the Premiership, and I'll tell you where I think we'll all finish, and we'll talk there in the comments. Please subscribe and like if you want, and tell me if I'm wrong. We'll talk about it in the comments. You guys have a good day and a good weekend.